babe. Hey.
There's seats up here. Y'all come and make yourself comfortable. We'll, if you don't have a chair, we'll get you one. Don't worry.
Scoot over. My head's in the way of the projector.
I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sisters, let's go down, down to the river to pray.
Y'all are free to sing if you want to.
I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, let's go down, come on down. Oh, brothers, let's go down, down to the river to pray. I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, fathers, let's go down, let's go down, come on down. Oh, fathers, let's go down, down to the river to pray. As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear oh, crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, fathers, let's go down, let's go down, come on down. Oh, mothers, let's go down, down to the river to pray. As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way.
We're back.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Katie Womack, and I'm serving as your worship assistant today. I've come to this church because this church is life-affirming and helps me to see and appreciate the good in people and in the world around me. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We also strive to welcome people across diversities of race, age, ability, immigration status, and belief. We are also a congregation working for reproductive justice. So, whoever you are, wherever you have come from, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We encourage everyone to visit our website, brazos-uu.org, if you might like to contribute your musical talents, if you have a great story to share about your life's journey, or if you have a passion for social justice. We would love to hear from you. If you're interested in getting involved, you can find opportunities on our website. To learn more about our community and what is happening, you can join our email list and our monthly newsletter. And you can also find us on social media by searching UUCBV. Today we're so happy to be in service together and online, and to have Pastor Kiya in the pulpit for today's sermon. She's going to preach on the social gospel movement.
Our call to worship today comes from Jane Addams, who was a major player in the settlement house movement. Maybe you've heard of her, Hull House in Chicago. And she says, "The good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life." Jane Addams.
And now please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of the life of truth and meaning we share together. Now, all please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
So the words are on the screen if you want to sing. This is number 15 in the hymnal, and it's a good Appalachian traditional song called "The Lone Wild Bird." The lone wild bird and lofty flight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of earth are in thy hand. The seas dart deep and far off land. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. The lone wild bird in lofty flight is still with thee, nor leads thy sight. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. Thank you. We all give a hand to Ken and John Ivy.
Hello. Just gonna do the power stance down there.
Everybody do. It makes it up pretty well.
I am so happy to see all of you in person. So I might tear up a little. But our Time for All Ages today is about a wonderful, wonderful social activist named Dorothy Day, who was a founder of the Catholic Worker Movement. Dorothy Day was born in 1897. That's a long time ago. But did you know, even at 8 years old, when our story takes place today, that she was already helping people? That's pretty cool. Now, Dorothy lived in San Francisco, well, in Oakland, across the bay from San Francisco. And she lived with her sister Della, and her mom, and her dad, and her 2 brothers. Dorothy was a very spirited girl. Do you know any of those? Yes. Very spirited girls who loved nature, playing outdoors, reading and writing stories. And she and her sister Della were best friends. So if you have a sister, you might know somebody like Dorothy. So the setting for our story today is in the Bay Area of California, where the Great Quake of 1906 happened. So the night of that Great Quake, which was an earthquake, Dorothy dreamed of a train that was roaring loudly, and it kept getting louder and louder and louder until she woke up and realized it wasn't a train at all. It was an earthquake, and it was pushing her bed back and forth across her bedroom, and she got really scared. When it stopped, she realized she didn't know where her family was, but she knew that all of her books were off her shelves. Her light fixture had fallen down and shattered all over the floor, and so she left her bedroom and went to go look for her parents and her family. She walked through her house, and the dining room was filled with dishes that were shattered all over the house. Finally, she went outside, and she saw her parents and her family standing really dazed on the front lawn, not even comprehending or understanding what had happened to them. So, all of the neighbors were outside in their pajamas. Everyone was looking around like they didn't know what was going on. And they thought that things were gonna get better. There was a couple of rumbles now and then, but everybody was safe in Oakland, and they were all really thankful for that. However, Dorothy looked up at the sky, and suddenly she saw smoke, and the clouds looked like they were orange at the bottom, like they were burning clouds. And her father said, "I think San Francisco is on fire." By that evening, refugees from San Francisco began arriving by ferry across the bay to Oakland. Hundreds and hundreds of people fled the devastation. The Days watched strangers walk past their homes. One woman carried a baby and had 2 young children clutching at her skirt, and they had no shoes on because it had happened in the middle of the night. They were very tired. Finally, Dorothy's mother stepped forward and said, "We have to do something. Come in, rest, come to our yard and rest, and we'll get you some water." So Dorothy started passing out water to the parched children that she saw pass by. Soon, Dorothy's father began pulling mattresses from their house so people could lay down and rest. Now, Dorothy knew that she wouldn't have a bed, but she said, "The grass is soft enough. Let's give my bed, my mattress, to the people that need our help and need to lie down." So she gave away her mattress too. The Days also knew that they needed to feed all these guests, these refugees that were coming past their house, but they knew they didn't have enough food to feed all of them. So the Days got together all of their neighbors, including a local grocer, to help make a giant pot of hot and nourishing soup for the refugees. And they continued to do this for many days. The neighborhood came together and did it. So when the entire neighborhood came together and gave of their time and their resources, people were fed. And Dorothy and her sister Della went further than that. They went into their house and found all the clothes that they could and their shoes and began handing them away to kids that needed them. They organized games for children, sang songs, made up stories. Dorothy even gave away her most cherished possession, her valuable baby doll. She gave it away to a girl who was crying because she couldn't find her parents. All around her, people were giving away everything they had to help other people. Strangers smiled at one another, chatting and joking like old friends. And everybody's hearts were warmed with kindness. Dorothy thought, why can't it be this way all the time? And then she also thought, maybe it can be this way, at least a little bit, at least some of the time. So as a young woman, Dorothy became a journalist and became more and more concerned about poor people. She remembered how her family and neighbors came together to care for those in need after the San Francisco earthquake. Dorothy later founded the Catholic Worker Movement in 1933. This movement told about the problems of the poor and working people and what Christian people should do to help them. They opened a soup kitchen and then houses of hospitality for people experiencing homelessness. So Dorothy became a great American leader in the struggle for justice and peace. And in many ways, Dorothy's activism spawned during the Great Quake when she was only 8 years old. And it continued to shape her life, her passion, and her activism until she passed away in 1980. All right, now will everybody join us in singing hymn 118, This Little Light of Mine. And if you are a small person who wants to go to RE, I will meet you at the back of the room and we'll head out to the playground. And parents, if you want to join it first, that's totally fine if you're more comfortable with that.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Everywhere I go,
Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
building up a world.
Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Everybody comfortable in their seats? We got open chairs now, if you should like. Let's see where we are. All right. One of the people I'm going to talk about this morning is a minister that had a Baptist church in Hell's Kitchen in the early 20th century. His name was Walter Rassenbusch, and he wrote a lot of books and influenced a lot of people to have a 7-day-a-week church. Do good in the world before you get to heaven. And so he was really famous for writing great prayers. So this is one of his prayers. You can take a position of prayer if you choose to, or you can just listen to yourself breathe. Oh God, we thank you for this earth, our home, for the wide sky and the blessed sun, for the salt sea and the running water, for the everlasting hills, for trees and the common grass underfoot. We thank you for our senses, by which we hear the songs of the birds and see the splendor of the fall fields and taste the autumn fruits and rejoice in the feel of the snow and the smell of the breath of spring. Grant us a heart wide open to all this beauty and save our souls from being so blind that we pass unseeing when even the common thorn bush is aflame with your glory. O God, our Creator, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen. So we're going to experiment with going back to a traditional kind of joys and concerns, because we were doing it online and we don't want you to miss anything we were doing online. So we have electric candles up here, and if you'd like to share a joy with the community or a concern with the community, you can come up to the mic and just tell everybody and light a candle. Please be brief. This is not a time for announcements, okay? Anybody want to go, just come on up.
I'm just sitting down.
I want to share the joy of celebrating Sharon Boston's life yesterday. It was such a prayerful experience and such a joyful experience, and I know her family was very, very grateful for it.
Anybody else?
It's a joy for me to be back in person with all the smiling faces behind the masks today. It's been 19 months and I didn't realize how much I missed it.
You know how Facebook will bring up a picture from X years ago today? This morning it was a picture of the last time I was able to bring my mom down from Waco 3 years ago to see Dad. And he said, 500 women around me all day, and here's the one I want to see.
My joy is a very personal one. It's that Judy, who's had a lot of trouble with her legs in the last year, is now beginning to walk almost normally and to drive the car. And that's pretty important since my eyesight's terrible.
I want to give a shout out to Bobby Presley, Mike Wheeler, and Joyce for raising over $3,500 yesterday in our parking ministry. Twice, sorry. Just trying to make up time until Pastor Kiya gets back. And thank you to everyone who set up and arranged for this worship service today. John Faber and the tech people, and I don't know who all to call out, but thank you so much. And welcome to this Sisters Church of Victoria. Hi, guys. And we have Zoom going on for our own members here that could join us today. So John's monitoring that Zoom room. So without internet here, this is a miracle. So,
We're in beta. Our responsive reading today is on the screen. It's 584. And I'll come up here and read it with you. So it's called a network of mutuality. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted.
Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that.
We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation.
The foundation of such a method is love.
Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war.
One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal.
We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means.
We shall hew out of the mountain of despair the stone of hope.
Martin Luther King Jr. Whew. I have to look at the words, so. Here we go. One, two, one, two. This old world is full of sorrow, full of sickness, weak and sore. If you love your neighbor truly, love will come to you the more. We're all children of one family. We're all thinkers, sisters too. If you cherish one another, love will come to you. This old world can be a garden full of fragrance, full of grace. If you love your neighbor truly, you must meet them face to face. It is said, now love thy neighbor, and we know well that is true. This the sum of human labor, true for me as well as you. how y'all doing? Everybody okay? Right, excellent. Okay. Here it is. All the music today is similar to the kind of songs that they would have sang in the period of time we're talking about this morning, which is from the 1890s or so. There was a minister in Ohio named Sheldon, and he wrote a book called In His Steps, What Would Jesus Do? And that's where that whole WWJD thing started. And that kind of inspired this movement called the social gospel movement. So what's going on in the world then? It's before World War I. There was a lot of optimism that there were a lot of robber barons and people were really starving. There were a lot of people coming over as immigrants and nobody was helping them. They were living in tenements. Maybe you've seen the Tenement Museum in New York, or you get the vibe of what was going on. The social gospel movement was a religious movement that was prominent in the United States from 1880 to 1925. Once the world wars happened, people get a lot more pessimistic about human beings being able to do good in the world. Ministers, especially ones belonging to the Protestant branch of Christianity, began to tie salvation with good works. That was the movement. It was a radical idea. They argued that people must emulate the life of Jesus Christ, be like Jesus, not just worship Jesus. And advocates of the movement interpreted the kingdom of God as requiring social as well as individual salvation, sought the betterment of industrial society through application of the biblical principles of charity and justice. The most important proponents of the social gospel were a guy named Washington Gladden and Walter Rauschenbusch, whose prayer I did for you. Through his ministry at First Congregational Church in Columbus, Ohio in 1882 till 1914, Washington Gladden wrote many articles and books, one called Applied Christianity and Social Salvation. His service on the boards of numerous reform organizations significantly influenced the agenda and success of the social gospel movement. Now, Walter Rauschenbusch, he was the pastor of a church in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan for a decade. He was a Baptist, and he taught church history at the Rochester Theological Seminary. His book in 1907 called Christianity in a Social Crisis was like the fifth bestseller in any kind of Christian writing, including the Bible. So it was a very popular book, and it influenced lots of people throughout the country. He wrote two other books, Christianizing the Social Order in 1912 and A Theology of the Social Gospel in 1917. So he had enormous impact. And I told you about Charles Sheldon. So this all goes up until about the 1930s, and a lot of these ideas were realized in the New Deal by President Roosevelt. So this movement's really important. It starts the progressive movement, all of which we are still benefiting from. The idea that you should get out there and get involved and make change in the world. Now, this early movement has some bad things about it too, but I want to talk about just the basic thing, because as we start partnering with other Christian churches, this is part of their tradition. And so we'll be able to talk. We'll be able to talk the same language. We'll be able to understand why some people are for this. And in the evangelical movement, it's split right now between people who are going social gospel and people who say, no, you shouldn't pay any attention to the world at all. You should just concentrate on saving yourself and getting to heaven. And they actually are hostile. Like I've seen articles in Christianity Today that attack Unitarian Universalist principles. Can you imagine attacking the principles? Freedom and justice for all? I mean, come on. But that's kind of the mood of what's going on out there. And you should be aware that there's an argument. And so who we partner with in other churches, we kind of need to know where they're coming from. So I'm trying to help us know a little bit about this movement. I just need to breathe for a second. I ran out to my car. So a lot of people believe that when Jesus said on earth as it is in heaven, was supposedly said, that meant we should be taking care of the kingdom of God on the earth. That sort of jives with Unitarian thinking on a lot of perspectives. Most social gospel advocates insisted that Jesus did not endorse any particular economic system or political agenda. Those who had comfortable homes, sufficient food, proper medical care, healthy working conditions, and adequate recreation were more likely to focus on their spiritual condition and respond positively to the gospel message. So not only Walter Rauschenbusch in particular said that he got involved in making changes on a social and community level because he got tired of burying babies. That's pretty strong language, right? But that was the case because Hell's Kitchen was a place that immigrants were forced to live, sometimes 3 or 4 families to an apartment with no elevator, running up and down the stairs, and not very healthy conditions, not good water, not good sanitation. So that's where this movement came out of. He repudiated the idea that the world was a shipwreck, which individuals needed to be rescued from. Social Christians argued that all of life could be redeemed, not just bread, but roses too. Art, music, education. Education is a big thing. It's also a big thing in the Presbyterian Church coming out of Scotland. That's where you get public education, is Protestants going, you have to be educated to find God. You need, Methodists were big on that too. A lot of the publishing houses in Nashville, that's why the music business is in Nashville, because they published Bibles and cheap tracts, and they would go to people's houses and sell them to them. That made a big difference. So all these things are connected. While working to reconstruct the United States, social gospelers disagreed about what form a redeemed society should take. Some of them lambasted capitalism and supported various styles of state socialism. In the 1930s, we almost had Eugene Debs ran for president like 5 times. I don't know if y'all know that, but and it was pretty close. He made a good run. So this goes into the labor movement, and at that point in the 1930s, it starts shifting to being more secular people doing social justice and nonprofit work than churches. But the Catholics get involved, like Allison was telling the story of Dorothy Day. But the Catholics still have a very strong workers' movement. And so social gospel crosses the line. A lot of synagogues are involved in social gospel kind of activities. It's not just one faith. Okay. So we talked about Jane Addams for just a second. I want to tell you, the settlement movement became popular during the social economic situation in the U.S. between 1890 and 1910, because more than 12 million European immigrants moved to the United States. And they needed help. And they needed education. They came and they got lots of cheap factory jobs, but they didn't have good unions. You know, you might know about the shirtwaist fire, things like that, where the doors were locked and the women couldn't get out. So they jumped out the windows and they died. That kind of thing was going on all the time. So that's the kind of things that people were fighting about. And the Settlements House would do English education, a lot of stuff like Family Promise, similar to what's going on there. That's what the Settlement House movement was doing. The most famous one was Hull House in Chicago, that Jane Addams and her lover, she was a lesbian, Ellen Gates Starr, ran in the 1890s. She's really influential with Eleanor Roosevelt. She had a big influence. They were friends, and They did a lot of work. So are y'all familiar with these people? Pretty much? Okay, I won't bore you then. Or try not to. It's bad when I write too long of a sermon. I should go like this. This is what my wife does. So I'll tell you some more about Rauschenbusch because he's really important. In the 1880s, he started as a minister at an immigrant church in Hell's Kitchen in New York. And then he linked Christianity to emerging theories of democratic socialism. So it doesn't have the pre-Soviet idea of socialism. Back then, socialism was kind of a nice idea. You know, it didn't have the weight that it has now in association with Soviet Russia. A lot of the people, early organizers like the Wobblies. Have you heard of the Wobblies? Workers of the Western World. These are guys that would ride the rails and go to a town that was owned by a company, and they would stand on soapbox until they got arrested. And then they would put a call out, and all the Wobblies would come and get arrested too. So they had too many people in jail for the little company town, and they had to let them out. In Seattle one time, there were so many Wobblies, and they put them on the roof because they didn't have room in the jail. And they started jumping up and down and cracked the ceiling. So these are wonderful people, but most of them got busted because they told people in the draft of World War I that they were fighting the rich man's war, and that would get you 20 years in jail. So most of the Wobblies disappeared. They either went to Russia early on and then left because they didn't like it and ended up in England, or they went to prison for 20 years. So things were worse then. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I recommend The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. It has a lot more history about labor, about this kind of stuff that people don't necessarily talk about. Once the people that lived it died, you don't hear about it anymore. But it's important to understand why we're in the situation that we're in now. Okay. One of the things I'm concerned about, the people I've had conversations in our congregation with, what I've noticed is that you all are all social gospel people. We're involved in lots of organizations. We're supporting them with our money, our treasure, our talent. We're interested in that, and we're building, and we're going to have the opportunity to make decisions about how much we let that building be used for social gospel kind of work. So a couple things I want you to think about. One of the good things about looking back in history and seeing how these early people did it, and the struggles that they had, and where they had trouble, was at a certain point you hit a place where we are all amateurs. We're not people that are trained to work with people who are mentally ill. We're not necessarily trained. We don't have social work training. You know, ministers, we get a little bit. Some of y'all may have that training and understand the difference between somebody who's well-meaning, who gets involved. Like, what do we do if somebody wants to live on our property? These are the things we need to start thinking about a little bit. And that's why I want to talk about social gospel and the movements. Rauschenbusch is a big influence on Martin Luther King and how the civil rights movement progressed. He was very interested in that. If you all have seen the movie about the Black Panthers, they were doing breakfast for everybody. They were serving lunches and breakfasts, and they were doing lots of social gospel kind of activities in the community, even though the police came down on them and there was a lot of racism involved. But they were doing a lot of good work, and a lot of these ideas come from this early period of social gospel. But I want us to think about it. The people who are doing the most connected, where you can just say, here's a straight line from the 1925 movement to the present, would be the Poor People's Campaign, which is coming out of the Union Theological Seminary in New York, if anybody's familiar with it. They are UCC seminary, but a lot of Unitarian ministers go there. And they've been active and doing social on the street organizing for years and tying it with their spirituality. So there are other people that we can unite with that are doing that kind of work. Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign is a spiritually led, minister-led nonprofit. And they're directly connected to the Poor People's Campaign that Martin Luther King Jr. was working on when he died. And you can go backward to Walter Rauschenbusch. So they're all connected. If you look up Rauschenbusch plus Martin Luther King Jr., you'll see how much he wrote about it and talked about them. So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you. They also started the Council of Churches. Have you all heard of that before? And now it's international. And they kicked the Unitarians out, by the way. We're not Christian enough. But the social creed of the churches from 1908, this is the kind of stuff that they said in their manifesto. They said, we're for equal rights and complete justice for all men in all stations of life. For the abolition of child labor, because this was a period of time where kids were still working in the mines. And you were fighting to have a weekend. You were fighting to have a 10-hour day, from a 14 to 16-hour day. Just think about it. A lot of changes have happened. For the regulation of the conditions of toil for women, as shall safeguard the physical and moral health of the community. For the suppression of the sweat system. We still have sweatshops, maquiladoras, in Mexico especially, and in Vietnam now, and in China. It's a global capitalist activity. For the gradual and reasonable reduction of the hours of labor to the lowest practical point, and for that degree of leisure for all, which is the condition of the highest human life. Bread and roses. We want bread and roses. These guys were involved in getting women to vote because they thought they could save people from drink if women voted. It's sort of sad now to think about it. For a living wage, which everybody debates, but a lot of people think it's at least $15 an hour. For the protection of the worker from dangerous machinery, occupational disease, injuries, and mortality. So when we're looking back at these people, there are lots of things that are encoded in law now that these people only dreamed of. OSHA, that we have masks and people are working and getting vaccinated, and all these different laws that are going on. They would not happen without the social gospel movement. And we are the next generation of that. So we are going to be able to make changes that we may not live to see, but our work matters. And our work will change people's lives. So let's think about how we want to use our space and what kind of boundaries we're going to have. Like, I'll give you an example. Somebody came in my office and they were suicidal. I would talk to them, of course, right then, but I would immediately get them more professional help than me, immediately. And that is just being responsible, right? So we need to get clear about our guidelines about what we're going to do with our space, what we're going to do with our energy, how we're going to partner with people who are more set up to take care of people that are homeless or food insecure, and how we can help them do that, whether we have money or just energy or treasure. Treasure's not always just money. Time, strength, energy. You can pick something up. As I get older, this becomes a much more interesting prospect. Anyway, I thank you all for listening to me this morning. We're going to get back to it in shape here and know what we're doing. are we in our script? Right, let's do it.
Now is the time in our service when we support the vision and mission of this church with our donations. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. This month, we are proud to support the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The UUSC is a nonprofit, non-sectarian associate member organization of the Unitarian Universalist Association. UUSC works to provide disaster relief and promote human rights and social justice around the world. If you wish to make an offering, you can mail your check, or for your convenience, you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom, and at the top you'll see a Donate Here link. In the chat box, you see that link, and please be as generous as you can. As we pass the basket, may each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope is there?
Okay.
And I will say we give thanks for these gifts that we have given for those we receive and for each other. May your generosity return to you tenfold.
My life flows on an endless song.
My life flows on an endless song of endless lamentation. I hear the real, the far-off hymns that hail a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds as echoes in my soul. How can I keep from singing? When through the tempest round me roars, I know the truth that liveth. When I can't read in the dark, something in the guide it giveth. Thank you. No storm can make my inmost calm, while to the rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
And now please join me as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again.
Remember the way of the wind and breathe and blow. Remember the way of the fire, sparkle and glitter and glow. Remember the way of the water and ebb and flow. Remember the way of the earth and grow. Go in peace. Y'all, we're gonna have refreshments and the kids are gonna come in. We can have a discussion if you'd like. You're free to move the chairs.